welcome back. Can't thank you enough. WiseUp is coming at you again. Today we have a special guest coming from Commscope Connectivity Solutions. This manufacturer is been around for a long period of time, manufacturing copper and fiber solutions. Now, with several other acquisitions over the years, they are a powerhouse at providing not only the copper and fiber solutions, but also the wireless solutions. Without any hesitation, I couldn't think of a better person to have come on WiseUp, and this season 2 of WiseUp that could be streamed on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and Anchor. I have Matt Baldassano, Principal Field Application Engineer. Please hold the applause. So Matt comes to us from Commscope. He's been with Commscope a long time, and I know Matt a long time. He's a really solid guy. Besides being so intelligent on the products that he is, the company he's working for and the products he's bringing to light, he also makes a phenomenal blends of wine as a hobby. Talk about a guy that has no time on his hands whatsoever, and now he's adding urban winery to the mix. But more so than that, and what WiseUp has been trying to do in our 2 seasons is educate everybody that's listening. Again, thank you to all our listeners out there. We can't do this shows without you, so keep on listening. You can find us again on Anchor, Spotify, Apple iTunes, any way you stream, we're there for you. And check us out at wisecomponents.com. But with that said, Matt is responsible for field application engineer, and it's such a mouthful because he's not only been that job, he's held several positions in the company. He's been an author of white papers. He's also has patents in structured cable solutions. I mean, again, I can't think of anybody else that I'd rather interview from Commscope than Matt Baldassano. So Matt, I am not worthy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your hectic schedule. Welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. I sincerely appreciate the warm introduction. It's quite kind of you. And yes, the wine gets done on the nights and weekends, right? So.
Yeah, no. I with all the kids, it's hard to do balance. It's a juggling act, right? But you're helping build the data center of the future to some degree. You have, the hyperscale data center, the colos, the cloud-based. This episode, we're getting people on the cloud is what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So from your perspective, or I should say from Commscope perspective, being such a large entity of structured cabling, and now some of the active components that they're selling with, manufacturing with Rutgers and other companies out there, do our listeners a favor, give us a little feedback about Commscope, what they're doing, what's the 30,000 foot view of the company, because I know it's a mouthful of what's going on, and to get into the nuances of everything would just be a 2-hour-long program, and we only got about 20 minutes to listen into how you're getting on the cloud, and what's scalable approach that Commscope's recommending is what we're talking about today, right?
Sure.
So give our listeners like that 30,000 foot view, if you don't mind.
I'll give you a quick 40-year history.
Oh, happy birthday, right? Yeah, happy birthday.
A couple days, right? So, 40-plus year history of Commscope, right? Started as a CATV coaxial cable company back in the 70s, and has since really evolved to, and I'll fast forward, 40 years today, a company that manufactures connectivity, whether that be copper, coaxial cable, twisted pair, and some hybrid fiber solutions of manufacturing fiber as well. But through acquisitions, we now have the capability to provide wireless solutions, whether licensed wireless in the kind of a distributed antenna system, and then unlicensed Wi-Fi through an acquisition, as you mentioned, of Ruckus. So Commscope really can provide kind of in the building, outside the building, and on the campus, and that's where the building and the campus as it relates to data centers is part of our topic and discussion today. So
The old slogan, if I'm not mistaken, was "at home, at work, or on the go," right? And it still hasn't changed much from maybe the slogan's changed, but the model has definitely evolved a little bit. No.
Absolutely. And the focus has been, as you mentioned, there's a lot of companies, a lot of technologies that have been acquired over the years to put us where we are today. The focus of my group and what we currently do is really, kind of uber focused on the multi-tenant data center market, the hyperscale market, and the group that I come from, which is coined the cloud scale market. So not quite the top 5 or 6 hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, some of the Chinese companies as well, but
Right.
the other, the software as a service and infrastructure as a service companies, which are starting to implement their hardware and their data centers similar to what we up and coming hyperscalers were doing some time ago, right? So there's some commonalities between this group now, which is not quite enterprise because they're deploying at a little bit of a more of aggressive scale and scope.
So let me ask you this.
Not hyperscale.
On the hyperscale side. So in your group, your team is called again what? What's your
So it's focused on cloud scale companies. So companies, so for example, software as a service companies,
right.
content CDNs, right? Content delivery networks.
Okay.
Companies that enable the cloud, enable the internet to really come alive, but they're not maybe the 4 or 5 kind of name brand, as I mentioned, right? Google, Apple, Microsoft,
Right.
Facebook, that kind of. They're on another level, right? So
yeah.
in between your day-to-day businesses and the upper echelon, and there's a really unique mix of technology going into these cloud providers because they're based on technology, right? Their business model is based on technology.
Right. Let me ask you this from your perspective. What is your beliefs as far as there's standards of cloud? So you have hybrid, private, and public. What's the differences from your perspective, and how do you, or I should say, how does your company approach that? As you say, a scalable approach. What's the offering? Is it one size fits all, or is it a different mix of flavors of solutions for each one of those?
Sure. If I can, if maybe I can share something right now, I can help you first define those terms that you had mentioned. Whether it be retail or wholesale or private, public, or hybrid, and I can.
Let me see. And Matt, and thanks again for giving us the high level overview, and appreciate it if you could, as you were mentioning, walk us through some of the solutions that you're offering in the hybrid, public, or private sector in the cloud, and what from Commscope's perspective, we greatly appreciate. So if you could put that up and walk us through, it'd be awesome.
Sure. Let me share my screen here. You see it?
Oh, yeah.
Great. Yeah, so as you were mentioning, Anthony, there are a couple of different aspects to how tenants today, and a tenant, in real estate terminology, right, is just an occupier of space in a building with other tenants, right? So when we talk about tenants within a multi-tenant building, we can then bring in, as you were referring to, the different types of clouds that those tenants will either provide or will use. So for example, on the right-hand side here, we'll go public to.
And Matt, right
Sure.
before, just to interrupt, I'm sorry about that, but just for our listeners out there, this portion of WiseUp podcast, Matt Baldassano is going through MTDC building and campus connectivity. This will be available, this portion of the video, this portion of the podcast will be converted into a video for you out there. If you'd like to see it and learn more about it on our YouTube channel at Wise Components. And if you'd like to hear more about this solution overall, in addition to the WiseUp podcast, reach out to us at wisecomponents.com, and we'd be happy to coordinate meetings to go into great lengths and details. But for right now, and the purpose of WiseUp, not just going over the multi-tenant data center building and campus connectivity that Commscope and how their approach is from the private and public sector, or I should say hybrid as well. Thanks, Matt. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'm glad you clarified that. And again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take these terms of public, private, and hybrid, right, which are buzzwords, and we're trying to overlay them to actual physical requirements, space, and more specific connectivity requirements in the multi-tenant data center campus, because we know that multi-tenant data center campuses are the exchange, right, for cloud on-ramps and cloud connectivity, right? So where all of the physical connectivity happens is within this multi-tenant data center to allow for private clouds to be enabled, public clouds to support enterprises, and those enterprises may have a balance of both a internal data, they may run an internal cloud as a private, and also use some public cloud offerings, and that is what's called a hybrid cloud, right? So a hybrid cloud requires access to the internet so that we can use public cloud offerings, but it also requires physical IT equipment and some area of a physical data center that is within a physical patch cord away from a public cloud provider.
So you're talking about the building entrance and the facility solutions. What's the flex frame that Commscope offers, or the solution?
Sure. Sure, I can toggle into that, and then actually that flex frame allows for that connectivity of between the public and the private institutions, which are co-located with each other in an MTDC, right? And
so kind of important.
Quite important for, and it's not just the flex frame.
Right.
It's there's a series of what we call optical distribution frames that allow for easy connectivity within kind of a massive fiber density environment, right? I'll go ahead and share the screen right here. How about this? Okay. So as you mentioned, right, a flex frame is kind of our largest optical distribution frame that Commscope offers. And as I was mentioning, it allows that physical patch cord to be routed, securely managed, and brought from a private cloud to a public cloud, or from a carrier to an enterprise. So it kind of spans all of the connectivity needs that an MTDC can provide.
Am I seeing the numbers right at 5,184 fiber capacity?
Yeah. So it's exceptionally dense.
Right.
And it allows for massive cables up to 3,456 and down to 24 fibers to come in. And as you can see from the rendering with of the back with those yellow cables coming in, cables can come directly into the back of the frame and be spliced into a splice closure, or they can go directly into the fiber enclosure, which is rack mounted in a 19-inch frame.
Now I'm looking at this, and I know some people are not going to be able to check out the YouTube channel, but for those that are not seeing what I'm looking at, wow. I don't care if you're a data center manager or an operator or somebody that just operates real estate. I mean, price per square foot in dense populated areas, density is key component. I mean, the more scalable that you could be, I mean, you're touching on a couple of points here. So that's why I'm just pointing out the slide, that some of the folks are not reading the slide. So I'm just pointing out the fact that the specifics of the dimensions of this footprint is very, very tight fitting in a data center. So that's one thing I'm just bringing up.
We've had lineups where we've had over 50,000 fibers within a 25-foot lineup, right? Maybe a little bit longer, right? But essentially a row of optical distribution frames that have the patch cord management pre-designed during the design phase, so that as the patch, we have nowhere near 50,000 patches at this time, probably percent capacity, but we have more than 90% available within our ducts, right? So we've designed it so that it can be used for the entire capacity that it was purchased for, and not just a sub-capacity.
Interesting.
You mentioned about density in real estate. The fact frame, and that's FACT, as the initials. The fact frame, which is in the middle, and I'll explain for those that aren't on the YouTube, is quite nice because it is a single-sided optical distribution frame. Therefore, it can go on unused space, such as a wall or a closet, and it allows for cables to come in on one side of the frame, albeit left or right, and patches to leave the other side of the frame on the opposite side where the cables come in. And from a density perspective, this allows both unused space to be usable, and it's quite dense as well, with over 2,600 fibers in a 48-inch width by 12-inch deep footprint.
No, that definitely is. I mean, the specifics definitely stand out. I figured I'd read left to right, so I was letting you get on to it.
Yeah, sure. So the fact is what we call kind of a Lego frame. It's a toolless installation after the frame is built, to install cables and elements which support the patch cords. It's all toolless, right? So it's a really neat frame, really neat system to get involved with. And then the NG4 access frame is, I would say, a little bit more of a legacy history in the CO market. It is an ODF on a pallet, meaning it can come pre-built with fiber connectivity off of a pallet, and you just bring in cables and you can splice or pre-terminate on site and connect into this frame. So this is a great building block for legacy or brownfield applications where you need kind of a tight footprint, and you may not need quite as much density, but you do need some patch cord management and some scalability within the platform itself, and that's where the NG4 access frame comes in.
Yeah, no, it's a lot to take in, and again, for those who are listening to the WiseUp podcast, this portion of the episode will be available on Wise Components YouTube channel so that you can see it. And to learn more about the Commscope offering, please, by all means, reach out to the folks at wisecomponents.com. We've been around since 1975, reputable distributor, authorized distributor of Commscope solutions. Matt, what else you got for us, and what gets you out of bed? And don't tell me the wine, although I know that's probably a passionate subject, and we could probably talk for hours on end about that.
No, there's a couple of things that both get me out of bed and keep me from going to sleep at night with some of the long nights that don't have to do with wine, or kids. Work from home, and it's really about trying to provide, in the day job, so to speak, trying to provide solutions out of the box that may not be kind of apparent to our cloud providers and our MTDC operators, who right now are they're trying to find solutions, right? Requirements and specifications are quite stringent right now for connectivity, and I'll put another slide up for you and just show you how many things we are considering when we have conversations. Mm-hmm. 1 second here, because this will give you a good example of the topics that we are.
Just to add a side note, Commscope, and Matt could elaborate on this better than I can, as being a person at Commscope who has a patent added to the wall of patents. If you ever are in the Texas land, Texas areas, Richardson, Texas, they have the wall of patents, as I referred to, that stem back to Bell Labs, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Matt?
Right. So Alexander Graham Bell shares a patent on that wall.
Right. So that's good company, right?
It is. So if I have my content up now and I can frame kind of what we're discussing and what are some challenges today in both the cloud end user tenant market and then within the MTDC operator market, right? Because we know that they come in many shapes and sizes, and they service many different end users with different value propositions, right? So this is kind of a good picture of how we see the merge of private, hybrid, and public, right?
Right.
Here we go. So within the first couple of this is, let me take a step back. This content was taken from a 3-part webinar that Commscope produced in August of 2020. And this is some content, snippets of content that we shared prior to my content being recorded, right? And really some basics of how we do connections, whether they're direct connect, interconnect, or cross connect, all the way to testing, and then to local and international standards, right? So those are some basics that we have conversations with day to day with both cloud end users and MTDC operators. And then there are some additional components of technology, which are, say, cutting edge or kind of bleeding edge, right? And you know, we can talk about different transceivers in the market today, different connector counts or connector types in the market that have different fiber counts. And we have different switching apparatus that merges these different connector types and fiber counts into something which would be, you know, a common communication protocol, right? And that's where the clouds and the MTDCs really want to pick up. They don't want to get into the weeds of the specifics behind all the images on this screen. They want something which is a little bit more turnkey, a little bit more reliable and commercially available. And those are some of the traits that some of the trends that I've noticed. They don't want to get into this. They want this technology on the screen baked into a solution, and that's what we provide.
Right, and then that sums it up, really, right? Because it's like that one throat to choke. You know, in the pictures that you illustrate so clear about the different offerings, the clouds, how you defined what is the cloud and how you're going to market and how you're providing that scalable approach. It should be commended. And one of the things that I always heard from Commscope, and it probably still holds true to this day, is that you never manufacture to meet a standard. You always manufacture to exceed the standard. So I'm seeing, like, everybody's talking about the standards. It was 1 gig, then 10 gig, then 10 to 40, then 40 to 100, and 100 to 400. And I'm hearing more than that now. Is that right?
800 is a number that's being discussed right now, and they're
it's a lot.
That out, right? and then it goes to terabit.
Right. Yeah. So we don't have the time machine to go into the future, but we can definitely see what along the way Commscope has brought to the table along the long 44 years of manufacturing, connectivity, cable, structured cabling, and now active component solutions. And I only anticipate to see other things on the horizons that are going to be cutting edge for us to sell at Wise and for you all to manufacture. And we look forward to hear more and learn more. Matt, what other, I know we just missed the 3-part series, as you pointed out, and I did catch the one that was released last week. What future with the COVID world we're living in today and the travel restrictions that are still in place by many states and countries, what is Commscope doing to combat that so that people can stay in tune to what you're bringing to the table? Do you have virtual webinars and other things coming up on the horizon? And if so, where could they go? Just go to Commscope.com.
Yeah, so so I may not be the expert, but what I do know is the Commscope Infrastructure Academy now has, I don't want to say free training for everything, but now has the ability to, you have the ability now to take training for free that was otherwise a paid for service. Again, I don't know carte blanche, but Commscope Infrastructure Academy is the place that you want to start, and then you'll get really a sense and a taste of all the technology that Commscope has to offer, and you can learn and you know, while you're home and have some downtime, you know, get your technology eco.
Well, Matt, I can't thank you again enough for taking this opportunity to speak with me and our listeners on WiseUp. It's been 2 great seasons, and I'm only anticipating more shows to follow. Hopefully we can have you back to talk about some other great products that you guys are working on or you're already in. But for those of you that want to check out WiseUp Podcast, again, you could stream us on Anchor, Apple, or Spotify, or other streaming services. And for the slides that Matt put up and he went through, we will have it abbreviated version of this on our YouTube channel in the coming days. So without further ado, I'm Anthony Romeo. This has been an episode of WiseUp, getting on the cloud with Commscope. Matt Baldassano, principal field application engineer, had took the time out of his hectic schedule to sit down with us. So Matt, thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me, Anthony.